the 3D ball bounce animation. So what we're going to do is we're going to create like a 3D environment with a 3D ball, and the 3D ball is going to bounce, as I've already shown you. So first thing to do is to find our ball texture. So I'm just going to go to internet and find whatever you want, ball texture map. The texture map bit is the important bit, because that will mean that you'll get one of these exploded textures. Make sure that it's you're going to images, make sure that it's relatively large. You don't want to have it too small, so at least a medium, and then you're going to get a bunch of these which look a bit weird, but what they are is they're essentially the basketball itself sort of exploded round, so you can wrap it around an object a little bit like that. So I'm just going to grab a texture, let's have a look, see what it looks like. That'll do, and I'm going to save the image onto the desktop. I'm using a Mac, it should be pretty similar on a PC. There we go, and then I'm going to import that by just double clicking in the project window and go to desktop, basketball. So now I've got a texture. I'm also going to grab, whilst I'm here, like a background, like a floor. So wooden floor texture, or even something along those lines, because that's what we kind of want. We want this kind of thing, and we want it to be like really big, because we're going to turn it into essentially a texture map. So this is big, this is big, that's pretty big, that's pretty big. I think this is about as big as we're going to get, so I'm going to go for something like that. Just have a look at it. It's a copyrighted image. Doesn't really matter if it's copyrighted. And save that. So I'll create a new composition, and we want to make it like 10 seconds long or something like that. Keep all of this the same, 1080 25, and we'll call it like that. And so what we'll do is we'll bring in our basketball, which doesn't really look like much of anything really at the moment, because you can, let me just put this on the full, you can see it just looks like a texture. So I'm going to take that, and I'm going to go to Effect and Perspective, and I'm going to go to CC Sphere. And what it will do is it will wrap that texture around a 3D sphere, and then you can only really see it if you rotate this bit, kind of thing. And then you can see the rotation. Yeah. So let's make this a bit smaller, because it's a bit big. And then I'm going to go back into my ball bounce animation, and I'm going to copy the animation keyframes. I go back into the 3D bounce, and I'm going to paste those onto there. So now I've got the 3D bouncing ball doing its thing. This is running a bit slow because I'm screen recording at the same time, so I apologise for the bit of a lag. So it doesn't look particularly real, and the reason is because it's not spinning at all. So I'm just going to flip out the transform. So there's the points of the transform, and what we need to animate is we need to animate the rotation. But instead of just one point of rotation, we're going to get a whole load of them. So we've got 3 of them. We've got X, Y, and Z. So when we get here, I'm just going to do just a a little spin, and then it's going to go here, and then we'll do another little spin. And that kind of stuff. And then I'm going to go all the way to the end. And then I'm going to a little one there, and then I'm going to ease these because they are coming to a stop naturally. So now when we play it should look a little bit better. I mean, it's doing a bit of a slide on the ends, but it's kind of reasonably okay. I'm also viewing it on quarter resolution, so it's going to look better when I put it up to a better resolution. So that's sort of stage one done. And so what we want to do next is we want to kind of go, okay, well, we want to put this into an environment. So I'm going to go back to my project window, and I'm going to import that big photo we found of the court, and we're going to drop that into the... It's actually not very big, so I'm going to go and find a bigger one, because that one is just not cutting it for me at the moment. I'm just going to go for that and make sure it's large, and I'm going to go for something like that, which is huge, like really big. And you'll see why it needs to be big in a minute. And the reason why is because we so there we go, save image as. Put it down there. Oh, it is actually a basketball floor texture. There you go. So I'll just import that. Yeah, so that's massive. So we drop that in, and nothing's really going to change. What we're going to get is going to get that in the background, and if we can see that it's a massive texture. But what we want to do is we want to turn this 3D, and so I'm going to... This one here, the little block, if you click on that, it will turn this into a 3D layer. And nothing's really changed yet because we don't have a camera. So we create a camera, and we're going to go OK. And again, nothing really changes. But what we've got here is, if we go to the rotation, and we can spin this. We can spin this around now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spin that around like this, so it looks like it's sort of going off into the distance. And then we can go to the arrow tool, and we can just move this down a little bit. So this is going to be our floor texture. Ooh, sorry. And then we're going to mask it. So I'm going to go into here, and the mask works slightly differently on a 3D texture because it's obviously in perspective. So if you just double click on it, it will create a round mask in the actual parameters of the layer. And then I'm gonna reduce this in size like a bunch, like it's something like whatever there. And then I'm gonna feather it. Oh, my computer's not liking this. And that will probably do for us. So that's kind of okay for, and then I can move this a little bit closer because that's what we kind of want. We want it to be sort of like a little stage for our basketball. And so our basketball is doing this. That's cool. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to try and finesse this a little bit. So we are going to basically duplicate this layer, because what we want to do is we want to have it mirroring. And so the easiest way of doing that is to actually to take the basketball. I'm going to take the basketball the 3D bounce one, and I'm going to duplicate that. So drop it onto here and it will create a copy of it. And then in this one, and then go back into the, and we're going to take the camera and the basketball and we're going to cut them and we're going to put them in here. So now what we've got is we've got this, the 3D layer as a layer, and then we can move that about and do whatever we want with it. And then we can duplicate it and we can flip it. Remember what we did before with the, and we can have that as a, basically as a reflection layer. So let's find a bit where it's on the floor, maybe sort of here, so that we can just line it up basically. So something like that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to try and we're going to fade it. So we go to Effect and we go to Style Transition and Linear Wipe, which is down here. And do you remember what that one did? And you kind of, you can go across it and like that. But we're going to do it from the top, and we're going to put a massive feather on it so that it does that kind of thing. Yeah. And we can change the how reflective this is going to be. And we can also, if it was me, I would go to Effect and I would go Blur, and I would blur it even more. Because it's going to be, things are not always completely sharp, and I go to Effect and Color Correction, go to this, which is Hue, Saturation, Lightness, and I'd bring down the saturation a little bit and bring down the lightness, because when the reflections are not always, they don't look the same as when they always look slightly darker. You don't get as much light back, and so when we preview it, it's going to take a while. Sorry. There we go. That's looking. So that's looking pretty good. And then the next thing we need to do is we need to take this layer and we need to duplicate it again. So this is our, so what we're going to call, we'll call this one reflection. And then I'm going to take this one and duplicate it, and I'm going to call this one shadow. So this one is going to be our shadow layer, so that we can kind of get like a little bit of a layer underneath that looks like a shadow. And we're just going to kind of fake it because we're not using true 3D. So what I've done is I've sort of turned it into that, and then that effect we used before, the color correction, I'm going to go to there, and I am going to take down the saturation, and I'm going to take down the lightness. So now we've got a black shape, and I'm going to go to Effect, Blur and Sharpen, and I'm going to go to Gaussian Blur, and I'm going to blur that a lot. So kind of that kind of thing. So now when we press preview, and if you haven't done so already, press save. And so then when we preview, we should get a nice shadow. So, the next thing would be to go back into our 3D Bounce folder, and this, or our 3D, and to change the, because we would like to make it kind of scale a bit. So remember the scale thing where we made it squash when it hit the ground, we could do that. The other things that we could do would be on this we can change the properties of the actual 3D object. So in this effect, the CC sphere, if you go down to shading, you can change how specular it is and where the light source is coming from and all that kind of stuff. So we want to do the light sources coming from the top and the light, we want to do something along those lines, I guess. And we want to make the ambient a bit higher because we want to get more of the backlight underneath there and stuff like that. I mean, this is these kind of slightly advanced, and then you can sort of make it slightly reflective. You can change a reflection map to something else. So what we could do is we can go into here and we can take the basketball floor texture and drop it in and make it invisible, and then in CC sphere, the reflection map, we can just make it the floor texture, and then if we increase we can start to get some of the floor reflected in it if we want to do that. And so now when we go back into here, we should have a ball that looks a little bit better. So there. And then what we're going to do is we're going to change. I'm just going to do the scaling thing really quickly. So I'm going to turn this to a quarter because my machine is slow. And so we're going to do the scale, and then it's going to go 1, 2, and it's going to do this kind of thing, and then it's going to go up, and it's going to go back, and then here, and then copy UV. So then we take these and go here, and it's going to do the same thing. Here, and so now when we go in here, we should look a little bit more convincing. I'll just wait for it to preview. It should take it just a couple of seconds. It looks a little bit better. So, and then the other thing I would do would be on the shadow, I would animate. So in this, in the transform, in the opacity. So this, we just put this onto quarter again. So when it hits the ground, I want that shadow here. I want that shadow to be 100%, and then here I want it to be like 20%, so that when it goes closer to the ground it's going to get more, and then when it gets up to the top I want it to be, I don't know, maybe 40, yeah, and then here again I want it to be 100, and then here I want it to be maybe 60, and then here back to 100, and that's probably going to be okay. It's probably enough. Let's have a look. So it's just little details just to kind of make it look a little bit more kind of real. Now that kind of thing is the kind of thing that would make it look kind of, you know, like it's meant to be there. And then after that, you can kind of think about it. Well, do you want to put a background? I mean, is there something that you... So, you know, again, go back to the internet and have a little look. And so I'll just put it... I'm just thought maybe some graffiti might look good. And... that will do. So you can use, you know, something like that, and you can create this as a background. So I'm just going to save image as. And then back into your project, find this image, wherever it may be. Is that it? No. Yeah, that's the one. And then drop that into the background. And you know, it doesn't look great, but you can fiddle around with it. And this kind of thing, I would take and, you know, drop the opacity because it's a bit bright, and you want it to kind of look as if this is part of the background. And that kind of stuff. So, and that's kind of basically it, really. And so now we sort of created something that kind of looks reasonably good, and that's